Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Vairakana Maha Mudra Mani Padma Jabala Pravataya
Take a moment to care for your mats and cushions, and then stand facing the altar for the chanting of the 3 refuges. So in keeping with our tradition, we will first take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in Sino-Korean, and then a second time recited in English. So even if you do not know the words of the chant, please throw your voice in with the sound so you can have some experience of it. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha,
And resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment,
And realize the great way.
and realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma,
And resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings,
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha,
And resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many,
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Now please remain standing while I read our ancestor dedication. On this second day of February 2025, we acknowledge that this land where our temple buildings stand has been the home of Native peoples, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, and the Ojibwe, the Council of the Three Fire Tribes, and also of Black Americans. We know that this neighborhood used to be a historically Black neighborhood during times of racial segregation and oppression. For our own awakening, and for the awakening of all life, may the benevolent energies of our meditation, chanting, and full presence here at the service this morning extend to all beings on this planet and throughout time and space. May there be deepening of our interbeing. May peace prevail and wars cease. Let us make 3 vows. Please return to your places. And our choir folks, would you please come up? Would you like to turn on the light switch? So while our choir folks are getting organized, I would like to welcome you all to our special Lunar New Year service. The Lunar New Year is the new year of the lunar calendar and is celebrated throughout much of the Asian world, and is also represented by an animal each year. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more a little later. But we have a special musical offering of a couple of songs from our newly forming choir. Do you have a name?
Zen Buddhist Temple of Arbor Zen.
So please enjoy some songs.
Just like the chant, these are really repetitive, and so if you can pick up all the words, feel free to join in. If not, feel free to just throw your voice in so we can all sing together. You are Buddha here and now. You are Buddha here and now. You are Buddha here and now. And every day is a fine day. In the summer it's hot, in the winter it's cold. In the summer it's hot, in the winter it's cold. In the summer it's hot, in the winter it's cold. And every day is a fine day. In the spring leaves grow, in the autumn they fall. In the spring leaves grow, in the autumn they fall. In the spring leaves grow, in the autumn they fall. And every day is a fine day. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry, let it all go. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry, let it all go. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry, let it all go. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow. No more worries, nothing to hurry, nothing to carry, let it all go. One more time. We're all moving on easy, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry. Nothing to carry, let it all go.
Please give up for our choir. So that first song, that was a Paramita song, correct? Nat Needle. So there was a man named Nat Needle. His Buddhist name was Paramita, who lived at this temple in the 1990s, and he wrote a whole songbook of American Buddhist music. I see you nodding, so I know you know some of the songs. He's quite a character. He performed over Zoom for us during the pandemic, one of his songs, a couple of songs. And I wrote down in my notebook something that he said, which I just remembered, which was, he lives, I think, in Massachusetts now. Is that right? Yeah, on the East Coast. And he said, you know, you need a little duality in life. Otherwise, you end up eating a lot of bad pizza. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what kind of character he is. So what was the second song from? I haven't heard that one before.
It's called We're All Moving. It's a Plum Village song.
Oh, Plum Village. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for the music. We're rebooting our choir after a few years off, and so you'll be hearing from them again, maybe about once a month or so. We'll see how it goes. So,
And there's a sign up in the foyer if you're interested in joining. And it's easy to remember because it's the first Sunday of each month. The practice is 8:45 and the performance is here.
very spontaneous.
You can sign up.
Okay. Well, it's really nice to see all of you. There's a lot of people here today. Did you know it was the Lunar New Year?
Yes.
You did? Oh, good. So, this year is the year of the wood snake. You might have read about this in the news, yeah? So, the pairing of an element and an animal happens every year. So I think last year was the wood dragon, right? Is that right? So this year is the wood snake. So wood is sort of a grounding element. And then I'll talk a little bit about the snake. So qualities of the snake in this sort of astrological formation. Rebirth. So we imagine where that comes from. The snake can shed its skin. The snake knows both the underworld and the surface world and is a traveler between the two. Transformation and resilience. And the snake is also associated with dragons because it has this regal coat, the scales, the shiny scales that it can also shed. So there has this regalness to the snake. And then I was thinking about the snake because I actually really like snakes. I know a lot of people don't like them or they're a little frightened of them. I had several pet snakes when I was a kid. You may not know this about me, but now you do. That's awesome. And the thing about the snake is it's kind of all body. Have you ever thought about that? It's all body, no extremities, right? And in our Zen practice, we're trying to get embodied, the wisdom of the body. And so I really think about the snake as the mind lives within the whole body. There's no other extremities. I find that really interesting. I'll talk a little bit more about the snake as our talk goes along, but when I was reading about these different qualities, I felt that this was a really poignant symbol for our current time. Resilience, transformation, rebirth, messenger between the underworld and the surface world. We have so many intersecting crises right now, it feels like. I spent yesterday evening reading the news for a couple of hours, and I had a hard time settling myself down to go to sleep. I had to return to one of our admonitions for our Dharma students that we study in our training programs. Keep your mind in alignment every day. Keep your mind in alignment every day. My mind was going all over the place. Yeah. Fear, worry, anxiety. And I was really taken with this image of the snake. Just, if you've ever watched a snake hunting, because I had a pet snake, I had to watch them. My little pet snake had this little house kind of made of a piece of bark, and it was nocturnal, so he would come out in the evening when he knew that maybe there was a chance some food would be left for him, which was already dead. And just sit with his head pointed out of this little piece of bark with a little curve in his neck. Just sit, unmoving for hours, seemingly just fully present, waiting, sensing. This kind of image of alignment, collection. So I think we have a lot to learn from this animal image for the current times that we find ourselves in. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, and also talk about sort of what does this moment ask of us in our Buddhist practice? Because we're beginning to start our new year here at the temple with a very special set of classes, which is the precept taking process. The precept taking process is something that happens once a year when people who want to commit themselves to the Buddhist path meet as a group over a couple of month period and study each of the moral guidelines of Buddhism. And at the end, there's a ceremony, special ceremony where we call it taking the precepts, sort of embracing them in your life, essentially, over this period of time that you've practiced with them. And you also receive a certificate and your Buddhist name. So my Buddhist name, as you may have heard, is Jagwa. So it's a very special commitment that people make. Not just let me read about Buddhism and try to understand it intellectually, but let me actually try to practice with it and understand what these teachings mean in my life. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I stumbled upon a radio program. I think it was in some newsletter that I received. Do we have any folks who listen to On Being with Krista Tippett? You know, it's pretty popular. Yeah. And this one was from last summer, and she was interviewing a writer named Adrienne Marie Brown, who used to live in Detroit for many years, which I think is how I came across her work originally. She's written many books about activism. She's been a socially engaged activist for many, many years, and has also written books about community, essentially. How do we live in community? And she's also a science fiction writer. So she's imagining new worlds and bringing that into her work. And I want to read to you a little bit about what she said to Krista Tippett. Okay. And I will preface this by saying, because I was reading the transcript of this interview, when I first read this, I wasn't really sure if I liked it. Okay, it's a little challenging. So let me just preface it by saying, see what it is for you, and then we can talk about it. So this is Adrienne. She says, I was doing electoral organizing in 2004. It was post 9/11. We were going to war with Iraq. And we're like, we've got to get Bush out of office. He's just going to keep perpetuating all these wars with these people and not help figure anything out. So we're doing all this organizing, and it clicked for me in a way that I couldn't. It's one of those things you see it and you can't unsee it. And I was like, oh, we are trying to just change the top layer of this very layered cake, this very layered process, this system of governance. We think that if we just win the presidency, then we'll be able to change the world. And it clicked for me. It's a fractal system, layer on top of layer. And if none of us are practicing democracy anywhere, it's not going to just suddenly work at the top layer. So I started asking people, do you practice democracy anywhere in your life? And she laughs. Not even politically, but just in your household. Who makes decisions about the budget? Christy Tippett asked me, well, what did people say? They said no. Nobody was practicing it. Or if people were practicing it, they would be like, oh yeah, you know, there would always be like one really happy person who was like, I practice it. And then I'd be like, okay, in your household, you practice it. Do you practice it with your neighbors? And they would have to be quiet. So here's what I think she's not saying there, because I read it at first and I thought, I felt a little defensive. Are you saying this is all our fault? Whatever your version of this is. And I don't think that's what she's saying. I think she's saying that it's our responsibility. And we have this Buddhist saying that this reminded me of, which is that a peaceful person makes a peaceful home. A peaceful home makes a peaceful neighborhood. A peaceful neighborhood makes a peaceful city. A peaceful city makes a peaceful state. A peaceful state makes a peaceful country. A peaceful country makes a peaceful world. And I think that's kind of what she was trying to describe. And I'm going to say a little bit more about why I think the precepts are connected to this, but let me read to you one other section from this interview, because I think in a way it's almost Adrienne Marie Brown's expression of the first precept, which is do not harm but cherish all life. And all of the other precepts, of which there are between 5, 8, and 10, depending on which tradition you practice in, are really kind of offshoots of that first one. Do not harm but cherish all life. So here's what she says. This is a section from a book that she wrote, I think in 2020, called something like We Will Not Cancel Us. She was responding to a lot of the difficulties with navigating shared social norms and kind of saying, these people I'm okay with, these people I'm not okay with, I'm not going to speak to them anymore. Okay. And so she's talking about peeling back the layer. What's underneath this desire to avoid other people? Under that layer, what I hear is, we cannot change. We do not believe we can create compelling pathways from being harm doers to being healed, to growing. We do not believe we can hold the complexity of a gray situation. We do not believe in our own complexity. We do not believe we can navigate conflict and struggle in principled ways. We can only handle binary thinking, good, bad, innocent, guilty, angel, abuser, black, white. Oh, unthinkable thoughts. Now that I have thought you, it becomes clear to me that all of you are rooted in a singular longing. I want us to live. I want us to want to live in this world, in this time, together. Oh, unthinkable thoughts. Now that I have thought you, it becomes clear to me that all of you are rooted in a singular longing. I want us to live. I want us to want to live in this world, in this time, together. So I think what I hear her expressing there is this recognition of interconnection. And the reason that we practice precepts, many reasons, is to help us really see all the ways that we are connected. The subtle ways, the big ways, the ways that we don't want to look at. And I think also the reason that we practice precepts is in some ways to have this container in which we're allowing ourselves to be tenderized. Because there's no way to practice precepts without recognizing all the ways in which you fall short of that ideal. But there's also sort of no better teacher of this whole tradition of Buddhism. There is suffering. Sometimes I'm my own cause, and what I do impacts other people. And yet, life is precious. So how can I conduct myself in a way that I'm living my life through that deep recognition of that preciousness? So let me read a little bit to you from kind of just this wonderful book about precepts through a Zen teacher's lens. This is by Nancy Mucho Baker. This is one of the texts. This is called Opening to Oneness. This is one of the texts that we use in our precept study, which I'll explain a little bit more about. But again, some kind of confronting approach that she takes. So Nancy writes, once I see the best way for me to understand the precept, to know myself in relation to that precept, is to see how I fail to live up to it. This is a practice of no preferences, no judgments, no shoulds or shouldn'ts, and no ideas of failure. It is simply allowing what is. Compassionately seeing and allowing who I am as a killer, a liar, a stealer, a stingy person, and so forth. So that the precepts begin to manifest themselves naturally and spontaneously in my life. We should remind ourselves that for Buddhism, the only way to free ourselves from our general shared delusions, our personal conditioning, and the suffering we cause ourselves and others is by going through them, not bypassing or rejecting them. And then she quotes Zen Master Dogen, if you fall down because of the ground, you must use the ground to get up. So what does this precept practice look like? If that's something that you would be interested in exploring, whether this year or another year in the future. I remember my little snake friend. You could tell when he was going to shed his skin because his eye would become this bluish milky white. And I didn't know until I had a snake living in my house that even the eye has a scale over it. Did you know that? So when they shed the skin, it starts at the nose and then peels back, and then perfectly captured in the skin is the eye scale. And so I love that image of the eye growing clouded and then clear again, because in a way that is how we are practicing with these precepts, these guidelines. So first is when we're practicing with a precept, such as do not harm but cherish all life. It's just in situations where that is coming up, stopping. Just stopping and noticing. Looking deeply to understand. And like Nancy Mujo Baker said, a practice of just allowing, no judgments, no sense of failure. And then responding. And sometimes the practice of just stopping and noticing needs to go on for some time. I remember a few years ago, this is sort of a mundane example, but for some reason it sticks in my mind. I went to the grocery store, I think after a service here on a Sunday, and I was very much in a rush, maybe anxious about work on Monday or something like that. And I had my grocery cart, and no matter where I turned, a corner or an aisle, the same person was in front of me, going incredibly slowly. Literally the same person each time. And this happened 3, 4, 5 times. To where I almost had to laugh at myself because it took that many times to say, Chakwa, slow down. What are you doing? You know, why are you getting annoyed? This person's just grocery shopping just like you. So sometimes it takes a while just to notice the pattern. And then let me just share a little bit from this book. This is another one of the texts that we study. This is called Waking Up to What You Do, a Zen practice for meeting every situation with intelligence and compassion by Diane Eschen-Rossetto. And what I like about this one is at the end of each chapter, for each precept, she includes a sample dialogue captured from her and one of her students as they were going through this study practice. So, let's see. So this is from the precept that she translates as meeting others on equal ground. The student says, in this kind of situation, maybe I'd have the thought, when I'm really tired in the future, she better do it for me. So she's talking about her partner, Diane. Okay, first thought, what might come next? Student, maybe the thought, what a good person I am. The other student chimes in. For me in that situation, I might note resentment or martyrdom. Diane, quote, how good am I? What a good and suffering person I am. Now that's a very long measuring stick. Where does that thought put your partner? If I'm the good person, then what does she have to